reasons, but for some aspect of what made you uniquely interesting and capable of contributing to a society of learners. And then instead of 4 years, you've got 6 years to use when you want. So maybe you take a few classes here, then you leave for a while. Maybe you come back and teach a class, and that gives you credits back that you can apply as a learner. But the concept of open loop learning, just as an example of like things that we take for granted that we can start to think about differently. The other, I love this idea that every kid would have a personal board of advisors. Why not? Right? Some people have this informally, and I love it. An academic inspirer, an industry professional, close confidant, student mentor, and then a wild card. Like, who's your wild card? Can you imagine how interesting that would be? Why don't we all do this? We could do this. This doesn't cost any money. Let's do this. Community Montessori. Let's have a personal board of advisors for every kid. But probably my favorite is the idea, and I was talking with Barbara a little bit about, your transcript, and I know, like, transcript, right? That's another thing. Like, we just can't even imagine education without a transcript. Think about if I were to show you, in fact, I should do this now that I say this. I should get a copy of my transcript. I still have it somewhere and just put it up there and then ask you what it tells you about me. It doesn't say anything. I don't even know. Like little abbreviations of classes I took at the University of Wisconsin and then a grade. Nothing. You don't know anything about what I actually learned. Even if the grade was good or bad, it doesn't mean anything. We all know this. So what they said is, well, what if in the future, instead of a transcript, you had a skill print? And imagine it like a heat map. So what you're looking for are like unusual confluences of heat that suggest, now here's a person that's really interesting. She's a really talented singer and a skilled plumber. Like, I have the perfect job for her, or whatever, but like, that would be useful information, as opposed to, she was an English major who got a 3.5. Like, that doesn't tell me anything. So, I think this is one of the ways in which we're, these are the kinds of ideas that need to be happening more. But I actually, I have some secret footage of a school of the future that is it's cooler than the Lockheed Martin school bus that takes you to Mars. And I think, in a way, it helps to address all of the changing notions of knowledge, work, and community. And so it's a 40-second clip, and it's so important, we're gonna watch it 3 times, okay? So the first time that you watch it, I'm gonna give you a different prompt every time. So the first time you watch it, I just want you to pay attention to how it makes you feel, okay? School of the future, how does it make you feel? How'd you feel?
Happy.
Happy? What else?
Adventurous.
Adventurous? Curious? What's that? Worried about the eventual cost of washing? Yes?
Playful.
Relief? Playful? 2 more. Sudbury?
Uniform.
What's that?
A bit uniform, like they're all dressed the same and they're all like going in a line and like there aren't any kids over there like playing with the rocks on the side. It's a bit uniform.
Okay, yeah, there is a sense of uniformity. Yeah, yeah. All right. let's watch it again. And now I want you to pay attention to what you notice. So now you can deconstruct a little bit. What do you notice? What did you notice? Say it again. We don't know, so they're exploring in different ways. What's your evidence? Yeah. Okay.
The one the leader, like he led through the puddle and then the kids kind of followed him and he walks away, they're also following.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed to me that the last one to arrive, it seems like I heard her saying, "Get out," and then the others started going on and following. So the last one to arrive never got into the puddle and seemed to be saying, "Get out," and then things just kind of evaporated. It's like everybody was having a fun, spontaneous time, and then a boss showed up.
Buzzkill. Here she is again, telling us to get out of the pool. Other things that you notice.
They're not playing together, but they're cooperative with each other. Like
They're
I
not
said,
playing together, but they're
One
cooperative.
that said go, and they didn't.
Yeah.
There's two that have one that's like a construction task or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing, they're prepared. They're ready for this.
Yet there's a sense of order. It's not just willy-nilly running through the puddle. They like go out at one end, go back in at the other end, except for the girl who goes rogue at the end and
Right.
runs in through the side.
Yeah. Yeah, it is both a sense of uniformity and kind of willy-nilly. It is a lot of these things. One more.
There was also a point where they were lining up, and one of them was walking through very slowly, and then they kind of lined up behind them and started going through very slowly too for a while. And then somebody just decided, no, I need to go ahead and broke through.
One of the reasons I asked those first two questions is, as Barbara mentioned, I'm a partner in a design studio, so we work with schools around the world to help them redesign their learning environments, and that means sometimes spatially, like one of my partners is an architect, although I'm not, but just as much it's culturally, structurally, pedagogically. And the most important aspect to any learning environment is how these people feel. But then to be a good designer, part of what we have to pay attention to is in what ways, and we can't know based on it's just a 1-minute video, in what ways was there intentionality in creating this as an opportunity to happen? You know, well, one obvious one, the color aside, is the ways in which they're dressed. But what are some other things that you notice that suggest an understanding that even if this wasn't planned, that they were ready for it? Yeah, but aside from what they're wearing, there's time. Yeah. Right. And yet there is an adult there, right? But we haven't heard him or her at all. Last time, now I want you, in the spirit of this, really to just pay attention to what you wonder. And no, you don't get extra point when you say something you're wondering, but it's actually your way of making a statement of what you believe. No, like really, what does this make you wonder about?
I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the one that says get out. I do want to point out.
Why is she saying get out?
From my last comment.
Yeah.
I used the word boss, and part of what I like about being a part of a Montessori community is that we have coworkers and we have advisors, we don't have bosses. I was using that in a slangy kind of way. But I don't know, it just seemed that there was a spontaneity, and then one person showed up who didn't get in the puddle and seemed to be telling everyone else to get out. And yeah, there's order and there's continuity and there's a playfulness, but the playfulness for me seemed to stop when the kid came along and said, get out.
So let's use that as an opportunity to think even more like a designer, which is translating the things you wonder about into how might we questions. You use the phrase how might we so much in design thinking, you literally can just abbreviate it like HMW. How would you say the exact thing that you just said in the form of a how might we question?
How many did you sit down this file?
That's not what I heard him saying mostly.
In the puddle, is that what you're saying?
Well, I want to let you speak first, and then I'll tell you what I think I heard you say.
How might we continue to do what we want to do instead of following what someone else is telling us to do?
Yeah.
So I think when I look at this, if you talk about chaos here, there's something called the Lorenz attractor, and where they all are in a line, and they break out of the line, and they're back in the line, and they break out of the line, and they're back in the line. So the idea that maybe we need some kind of thing where there's disorder, and then there's order, and then there's disorder again, so induction can happen, and then disorder, and then order with disorder.
So what's your how might we?
How might we in schools have spaces where students can actually just randomly have like spontaneous interaction, and then back for some kind of ability to decode interaction?
Yeah. What else? Yeah. You don't have to, but yeah.
When we as adults stop doing that and stop interacting with our environment that's natural, organic, like, and we get so busy with like whatever we get busy with that doesn't seem, yeah, there's order, but when was the last time we went and did both? And how might we install that in ourselves if we're going to be educating others, like especially young children?
Yeah.
All my 6 adults that walked up to her.
Yeah. I have chills when I think about that question and how important it is for us as adults.
So
And
in Montessori theory, a big part of the theory is the valorization of the individual. So my how is how might I valorize my individuality? Do I want to get out?
Help me more? Yeah.
Well, continuing on her, how might we de-school ourselves as adults to take away how we've been conditioned to be open to something that's more spontaneous and different than any of us have experienced?
And I hope you all see the through line of what we just talked about the educational system in which we were all raised and how this got separated from us, right? I mean, like there's a direct line of a school system where the two primary design principles are the tabula rasa and the assembly line, and our inability to maintain a sense of awe and wonder about the world. Those things are not ancillary to one another. One more? Yeah.
I realized that
I just started wearing glasses, by the way, and I'm wearing them and I can't even see with them on.
Off the stage.
I won't fall off the stage, it's not that bad, but I'm gonna take them off. Yeah.
It seems like they were having so much fun, but one boy just decided to leave and all the rest just decided to follow him. So it seems like it was not really interesting to him anymore. So how might we really keep the same thing like interesting to our children? Like just to let them really stay focused for longer?
Yeah. I mean, you see where I'm going with this with the Montessori crew, because on one level, we do have a different set of challenges. So let's be real about it, right? I mean, but there's also within each of these, there are opportunities that have never before existed because we have never before been on the precipice of a fundamental reordering to the relationship between human beings and knowledge. So we are in the midst of a gradual shift, not that content knowledge doesn't matter anymore, but that content knowledge is no longer the end goal of schooling. In the schools of tomorrow, content knowledge is merely the means by which we reach the end goal, which is a deeper understanding of self. This idea work. I was talking with Barbara. How many people know the book? A friend of mine at Harvard named Tom Rose wrote it called The End of Average. Anybody know this book? It's really good if you haven't read it. He's working on his new book, and he just told me that there's some research in there about the way in which Americans have defined and are starting to redefine success. It's really interesting, because that's really this work one is about success. Not surprisingly, the way we have historically defined success is through, I mean, you can guess, right? It's wealth, it's power, and it's privilege. That is the meaning of success. That is the sweet smell of success. But what his research is going to show in his new book is increasingly Americans are starting to define success as fulfillment, as some type of fulfillment. That is a huge opportunity, and it is directly related to the gradual elevation of ideas like universal basic income. So is it possible that widespread automation can actually create more spaciousness for fulfillment, for knowledge of self, for playing in a puddle as adults? And then finally, this idea of community. This is the hard one. I don't know what to do about this, y'all. This is the thing that really worries me. We are so isolated from one another and from one another's ideas and from one another's humanity. How do we begin with school, knowing that how we are at the small scale is how we are at the large scale? I'll say that again. How we are at the small scale is how we are at the large scale. So how might we, in our schools, be even more intentional than we have been in the past about the extent to which we create spaces for our young people and ourselves to be more curious and certain about one another. And so, the good news is, as we start to think about the schools of tomorrow, there are things happening in the world that are making new possibilities, I think, more attractive to more people. But how we go about creating those environments, we already know a lot, right? I found this on your website. And I love it. I mean, let's imagine that in every school of tomorrow, the primary focus is on the spiritual development of man and woman, the enhancement of our value as individuals, and the preparation of young people to understand the times in which they live. Once again, thank you, Miss Montessori. So yes, the robots are coming. Yes, these are strange days, and we are on the cusp of a brave new world. But we know more than we think we do about how to continue to orient people to not only survive, but thrive in that world. Thank you very much. So, I think we got some time for some questions. Is that cool, everybody? Like I said, that's super partial. We can get as in the weeds or as broad as you all want to. What questions do you have? Or statements, or provocations, or barbaric yawns? Yeah? You literally have a barbaric yawn. Yeah, all right. What are you wondering about? Yeah.
Are we going in the right direction or the wrong direction?
Yes. What I mean by that is, as somebody who, I feel I'm very aware of my fortune and privilege of being able to work in and with schools around the world. And so what I feel like I get to do on a weekly basis is bear witness to some of the best work that's happening that is largely unknown outside of that community. This is one example. Your Community Montessori is one example. But there are lots of them. So it is yes in the sense that I feel there is already a revolution underway. It's just not evenly distributed. And I'll give you one example to get really specific. I talked about this a little bit with some of you earlier. There's a handful of states, mostly they're in New England, I'm not quite sure why, but Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and there's a lot more states that are starting to think this way, that have done away with Carnegie units. The state has done away with credit hours. Think about that. So to graduate from a high school in New Hampshire, it's not that same old stuff of you need 120 credits and you need English 9 and English 10 and da-da-da-da-da. No, it's competency-based. So they're saying these are the skills and competencies that we want graduates of our New Hampshire high schools to have. You may acquire this set of competencies in English 9. You may acquire it in an internship. You may acquire it over the summer. That's a pretty radical shift away, right? So you're changing from the idea that time is the constant and learning is the variable to the bit where learning is the constant and time is the variable. There's a lot of examples like that. And it's yes, because it's still really hard for us to imagine education being anything other than what it has always been. Like there is no more intractable set of memes about in American public life than the school, the chalkboard, the teacher, the pep rally, learning cursive, all of these things. Like people, they matter to people. Even if you didn't like school, my God, with the world the way it is, at least I know that high school is supposed to look a certain way, and now you're telling me it's not? So there's a lot of work that has to be done around the mindset shift required to even, I think, be receptive to a pretty different notion of knowledge, of work, and of community. Yeah.
Well, as you mentioned, the mindset shift, we are a charter school, or some like charter schools will hold these, requirements that the state has laid out. And so, as educators, what are things we can do to help to shift the mindset of the powers that be, if you will, that are still focused on standardized testing and things like that. We have a foot in both worlds, and it makes it a very complicated path to navigate.
Yes. So we're going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow, those of you that are part of Community Montessori. But for me, too, a key component of design thinking is rapid prototyping. So part of what I think can get us stuck when we think about, we're not measuring the things that matter. We're stuck in these systems that are constricting my ability to be creative and to create more spaciousness for my kids and for myself and to avoid feeling burned out. And I don't want to teach the test. And it's just, it's like, you're just getting lower and lower as you think about it. And you can't, in the same way that like there's a reason that Alcoholics Anonymous says one day at a time. Right? You can't stop drinking for the rest of your life, but you could maybe not drink today. Now the flip of this is, rather than think, I feel powerless until I can figure out how to get these bozos to listen to what I'm saying, what could you pilot in the next 30 days that you can control that could start to tinker with your own personal how might we? Maybe it's just one day. Maybe it's a week. Maybe it's something you do by yourself. Maybe it's something you do with 5 of your colleagues. But again, if we really believe that how we are at the small scale is how we are at the large scale, what would it take in order to make a school that's already as good and as high functioning as Community Montessori to just become alive with experiments, which is very much in the spirit of Maria Montessori, right? I mean, there's no way that she wouldn't have continued to be tinkering right up to the present day if she had figured out how to live long enough. So as the inheritors of that legacy, what can we start to tinker with? And if the thing is about testing, what can I start to experiment with on a safe, small enough level that starts to demonstrate potentially to myself and to others of a very specific, different way that yields better results and keeps me sane in the process? Yeah.
Okay, so I heard you talk about the inevitability of technology, and then I heard you talk about how this can be potentially dangerous because we can put ourselves in little baskets. So, as a person that works with adolescents that are constantly bombarded with it, how do we help to make that a positive place in the world, or do we just say, pretend like it doesn't exist, let's go and play in the puddles, you know, like how do you balance that?
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I wish I had a better answer. I can't imagine how hard it is to be an adolescent today. It's always hard to be an adolescent. But, like, I didn't have a cell phone when I was in college. There are some pictures of me in college, but, like, they're like in an album somewhere, you know? The idea of combining, like, the toxic swirl of the inevitable insecurity and desire for social validation with Instagram. Oh my God. Here's what occurs to me. Years ago, when the internet first started really coming into schools, a lot of schools' response was to get filters and just keep it out. Interestingly, the Catholic schools, of all groups, had a totally different reaction, which was no filters, but ethical internet use policies. So what they did is, first of all, they were like, look, this is a thing, the internet. It's going to stay a thing for a while, and we're smart enough to know that you're going to be using this when you're in our building and when you're not. So we should probably teach you how to use it responsibly. And so, no filter, but very clear, co-constructed expectations of what constituted ethical and responsible use that you pledged to uphold. Is it perfect? No, but if I think of the schools and the ways in which they responded to censorship, the Catholic schools got that one right. I wonder if there's some variation of that at the individual level that you could start to experiment with your kids. And if nothing else, if I was 11, I would want somebody like you that I'm sure I trusted and looked up to be able to just talk this through with. And that would probably be pretty huge in and of itself. Yeah.
So I would think that certainly the exposure of this and the power of this tool, which is a tool, to understand and co-learn knowledge is great. But the logical fallacies that are evident, and I think teaching logical fallacies and understanding what true statements are and what makes something true to you and your community is beneficial to understanding these pieces of technology. But without that, I think that's probably one of the most important things we need to teach. Now, is this idea of how do you use this tool? Even if it's to create your brand of Instagram, you look really great on Instagram. What is this tool? Why are you doing it? Like, why is that important to you and your community and whatnot?
Yeah, media literacy is a must-have. Particularly, that was what I was thinking about in the background when talking about the Russia, fake news story and yes, and they're not going anywhere. They're all in our pockets. I think we got time for one more. Yeah.
There's advocacy for this idea of changing education in Washington. Because obviously we're in a shaky ground with public education in Washington right now. It's questionable at best if that's even existent for years. So is there someone there advocating for a change in the way? For this mindset? Do you know?
I do, and yes. So I came here from Oakland, a meeting of 14 foundations and up to 70 grassroots activists across the country, mostly in communities of color, that are doing their work of trying to figure out how to start to movement build, to create a greater groundswell of support for the kinds of things we're talking about. There's another organization that I'll leave you with that's worth looking up called Education Reimagined. So if you Google Education Reimagined, you can find out about them. So it was started by this organization called the Convergence Policy Center, which is based in DC, which is a very cool idea, very much in the spirit of community, where they take like 20 to 30 people from a diverse ideological spectrum who are super likely to disagree about almost everything important related to X, climate change, the environment, or education. And then under skilled facilitation, they bring that group of 30 people together over the course of like 18 months to see if this group can agree on anything. Because if this group can agree on something, then that's probably pretty valuable. So Education Reimagined brought together some leading folks from think tanks on the right, classroom practitioners, leadership of both unions, all kinds of folks. And what has resulted is them articulating what they think is a vision for the future of learning, which is very much in line with what you care about. Spoiler alert, it's learner-centered education. But they're raising a lot of money and starting to think about how to begin to create more support, not just in DC, because the feds they get a lot of attention. Arnie Duncan got a lot of attention, Betsy DeVos gets a lot of attention, but as I think you all know, federal dollars are a tiny percentage. I know that they can mess things up, I get it, but it's just as important to be thinking about those conversations at the state and the local level. Look at what's happening in New Hampshire, for example. Like, how would a competency-based statewide system of accountability and assessment impact Community Montessori? I don't know, but I guess it would probably help. So there are organizations, Council of Chief State School Officers. Part of the reason I put this up here, I know that I'm going to be with a lot of you tomorrow, but like anybody, I feel like part of my job in exchange for the honor I get of being able to be a part of all these things is to serve as a dot connector for folks. So if there's something in particular that seems interesting, contact me. Let me connect you to other people that I've met around the country that are thinking about similar things, and you can learn from them, they can learn from you. Because this is life's work for all of us. Thank you very much for coming out.
That all the teachers in the room stand, and I really think that's everybody. I really think that's everybody. I really think it's everybody. And give yourselves a round of applause because you are the future of the school. Right?